Welcome back to another deep dive. You guys, this week we're going to be talking about the Chad Daybell trial. And week two, oh boy, week
Yeah.
two was a roller coaster.
It just keeps unfolding, doesn't it?
It does. It's like every week it's like, oh, we thought last week was crazy, but this week is even crazier.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we saw this week that I thought was really interesting was at the very beginning of the week, we got this dash cam footage of Chad's arrest. And if you recall, this is after they searched his property and they had found human remains.
Right.
So you would think someone in that position would be, distraught.
You would think so.
You would think so. And his reaction was anything but.
Yeah, you don't see that.
No, you do not.
He seems very focused on like mundane tasks like his mortgage and, finances and stuff.
Yeah, it's like the gravity of the situation hasn't quite hit him yet.
Right.
And there's actually a point where he chuckles when he's discussing this situation with his daughter, Emma.
Yeah, that was really strange.
It is strange. It's very unsettling. And it makes you question, like, what is his emotional state? Is he aware of the severity of what's happening?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of different interpretations. People are saying, is it denial? Is it a coping mechanism
Right.
to deal with this extreme stress? Or is it, a chilling indication that he doesn't have any remorse?
Right, right. Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to say.
Yeah, so it's definitely something that is going to stay with me for a while, I think.
Me too.
And then we have Emma, his daughter's reaction, which is
Yeah.
equally perplexing. She's obviously very emotional. But then she kind of tries to dismiss the discovery of human remains.
Right.
She's like, oh, it's just dog bones.
Yeah, which I mean, after they found JJ's remains, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I think you would know the difference.
Yeah, it's just a really strange response.
It is. And it raises the question of, like, what kind of influence Chad has had on his children, and was she genuinely trying to rationalize the situation, or was she, mirroring her father's reaction?
Right, trying to detach.
Yeah, detached from what was actually happening.
Yeah. And then it gets even more bizarre.
It always does with this case.
Always we learn that Emma has been communicating with Lori in jail this whole time.
Oh, wow.
And not only that, but Chad instructs her to keep putting money on Lori's commissary account.
Huh. So he's still taking care of her.
Right. Like if he truly believes that she's responsible for all of this, you wouldn't expect him to be, so concerned about her well-being.
I know, it seems like it contradicts his narrative that, he's this grieving husband and he's been betrayed.
Mm.
And, I don't know, maybe it's, suggests a level of complicity or at least a deep connection that transcends the accusations.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that a lot in the Netflix documentary, right? Like their connection seemed very, very deep.
It did, yeah. And I think that's what makes this case so fascinating, is that there are so many layers to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of complicated, let's move on to the exhumation of Tammy Daybell, which is Chad's previous wife.
The scene in the courtroom was very emotionally charged, especially for Tammy's Aunt Vicky, who was there.
It's just heartbreaking.
It is, and you could just feel the heartbreak in the room as those photos of the exhumation were shown.
Yeah, and just imagine, her family had already lost her once, and now they're being forced to relive it all over again.
Right, and in the middle of all this emotion, Chad's defense attorney, John Pryor, sees an opportunity.
Oh, really?
And he launches into this very aggressive cross-examination of the detective who requested the exhumation.
Oh, wow.
And he basically pokes holes in the detective's knowledge of Tammy's medical history. And he really questions the validity of even exhuming her body.
I see. So he's going for, trying to create doubt.
Right, trying to create doubt in the minds of the jury.
Trying to say that, the prosecution's case maybe isn't as strong as it seems.
Right, exactly. And, it definitely had an impact. Tammy's family and other courtroom observers were visibly frustrated by what seemed like a really weak response from the prosecution.
Oh, so they didn't really have any good answers.
It didn't seem like it.
Huh.
It didn't seem like it. And it left a lot of people wondering, are they really prepared to go up against such a seasoned and aggressive defense attorney?
Right, because, I mean, this is just a beginning, and he's
Right.
already pulling out all the stops.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, this really set the stage for what's to come in this trial.
Yeah, it's going to be a battle for sure.
It is. And, in addition to all of the, the legal back and forth, we also got into some of the, digital footprints that we leave behind.
Oh, right.
We heard testimony from an FBI agent who presented this timeline of Chad's Google searches. And this wasn't just random browsing. This was targeted stuff.
Oh, wow. So like they had a specific purpose.
It seemed like it, yes.
Mm.
And these searches spanned the time from when he met Lori to when things really took a dark turn.
I see. So it gives us a glimpse into his state of mind during this critical period.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
it reveals a lot about his interests and his preoccupations.
So what kind of things was he searching?
Well, for example, he searched for Charles Vallow's alias, which was Ned Schneider.
Oh, wow. So he was interested in Lori's previous husband?
It seems like it, yeah.
Interesting.
He also looked up the compatibility of his and Lori's star signs.
Oh, so he's into astrology.
Maybe, yeah. Or maybe there's a deeper belief system there that we're not quite aware of yet.
I so.
And then there's a search for malachite EB jewelry, which seems kind of random.
Malachite. Yeah. What is that?
I know, but it could actually be linked to this belief system about light and dark spirits, which, as you know, plays a huge role in this case.
Oh, right, right. That's coming up a lot.
It is. And here's the thing, though. While all of these searches are being displayed in court, Chad remains completely nonchalant.
Really?
You would think seeing this evidence presented in such a public way would evoke some kind of reaction from him.
Right.
But he's just stoic.
So strange.
It's so strange, and it just makes you wonder, is this calculated? Is he trying to appear innocent, or is he really that detached from reality?
Right. I mean, is he a master manipulator, or is there something else going on?
Right, and I think that's a question that's going to linger throughout this entire trial.
It is for sure.
So you'll make sure you guys subscribe because we're going to be covering it every step of the way.
Oh, definitely. This is one you don't want to miss.
Nope, you do not.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're putting a puzzle together, but with every piece we find, the image changes.
Right, yeah.
It's just more questions.
More questions, exactly. And this week was no different. It introduced us to Zulema Patenis, who is Lori Vallow's friend and hairstylist.
Okay.
Seemingly normal connection.
Yeah, on the surface.
Right. But her testimony was anything but.
Oh, really? So what did she say?
So she offered this really unique perspective into Lori's life before and after meeting Chad.
Okay, so what was Lori like before?
So before meeting, Chad Zulema describes Lori as this very devoted mother.
Okay.
Really involved in her children's lives, active in her church. And she seemed to have this really, stable and happy life.
So like a normal mom?
Yeah, pretty much. But that all changed when Chad entered the picture.
Of course.
Yeah, she noticed this really distinct shift in Lori's demeanor after she started spending time with him.
Like what kind of shift?
She became more withdrawn, more secretive, and she became increasingly preoccupied with apocalyptic prophecies.
And zombies.
And zombies, yeah, it just gets weirder and weirder.
It does.
And that's where we see this convergence of Chad and Lori's beliefs, right? We talked about those Google searches, those light and dark spirit searches.
Yeah, right.
Lori started echoing those beliefs. She started talking about people being possessed by evil entities.
Oh, wow.
And she even refers to her own children as zombies at one point.
Oh, that's so disturbing.
It's heartbreaking and it's terrifying. And it makes you wonder what could have possibly driven her to that point.
Right. I mean, how do you go from being this loving mother to talking about your kids like that?
Right. And I think part of the answer might lie in, the power of belief systems.
Okay.
Especially when those beliefs are reinforced by someone you trust and admire.
Right, like Chad.
Exactly. And it seems like in Lori's case, her vulnerability combined with Chad's charisma and his deeply held convictions, it led her down this really, really dark path.
Yeah, like she was searching for something and he gave her the answers, but they were the wrong answers.
Yeah. Yeah. And within that framework, her own children become obstacles.
Obstacles to what?
To her spiritual advancement.
Wow.
Yeah. So, we have to remember that at the heart of this case is the children and their tragic fate.
Right.
And this week we heard from the forensic anthropologist who examined their remains, and the atmosphere in the courtroom was just heavy with grief.
Yeah, it's a reminder that, underneath all of this legal stuff and psychology and the beliefs, there were 2 innocent children who lost their lives.
Exactly, and the details shared by the forensic anthropologist were very difficult to hear.
I can imagine.
The children's remains were found wrapped in duct tape and plastic bags.
Oh my gosh.
And that level of premeditation and callousness is just beyond comprehension.
It really is. And the fact that Chad and Lori seem so indifferent to it all just makes it that much more disturbing.
It does. It really does.
Yeah.
And in the midst of all of this, emotional testimony, we also had some major legal fireworks.
Oh, really? What happened?
So John Pryor, Chad's attorney, filed a motion to dismiss the entire case.
Wow, the whole thing?
The whole thing, citing prosecutorial misconduct.
Oh, wow. That's a bold move.
He argued that the state had withheld crucial evidence and engaged in inappropriate communication with witnesses.
So he's trying to say that the whole trial is tainted.
Exactly. And the courtroom was just buzzing.
Yeah.
Everybody was waiting to see how the judge would rule.
Right, and what did he say?
So ultimately, he denied the motion to dismiss.
Okay.
But he didn't let the prosecution off the hook completely.
Oh, really?
He expressed concerns about their handling of the case and even hinted at potential sanctions.
Oh, wow, so it's not over yet.
Not over yet. No,
Yeah,
it was definitely a partial victory for the defense, even though the case wasn't dismissed.
Yeah, I bet the prosecution is feeling the pressure now.
I'm sure they are. And the tension between the two legal teams is definitely palpable.
You can cut it with a knife?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But throughout all of this, the central question still remains, was Chad Daybell, this masker manipulator who orchestrated these events, or was he this misguided follower caught in a web of his own delusions?
Right, and what about Lori? Was she a willing participant or was she a victim of manipulation?
Right.
So many questions.
I know, and as week 2 progressed, each new witness, each new piece of evidence just added to the mystery.
Yeah, it's like we're going deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole.
We are, yeah. It's like we're in this crazy house of mirrors with truth and lies everywhere you look.
And just when you think you're starting to get a handle on things, when 4 comes along and throws you another curveball.
It does, and a lot of that came from the testimony of April Raymond, who was a friend of Lori's.
Okay, and what did she have to say?
Where she really emphasized this contrast between Lori's life before and after Chad.
Okay, so paint us a picture.
So before meeting Chad, April described Lori as, really involved with her kids, active in the community, seemed pretty content with her life in Arizona.
Okay, sounds normal enough.
Right. But after connecting with Chad, her priorities just totally changed.
Oh, really? So what happened?
Well, she became fixated on near-death experiences. She was obsessed with this idea of spiritual rankings, and she became more and more isolated from her family and friends.
Wow. It's like he introduced her to a whole new reality.
He did. And in this new reality, spiritual enlightenment was the most important thing.
Even more important than her kids.
It seems like it. And, we talked about the whole zombie thing, and hearing April echo those beliefs, it was really unsettling.
Right, because now it's coming from someone who knew Lori personally.
Right, exactly. And it just reinforces the idea that Lori's views were totally warped by Chad's ideology.
Right, and to the point where she no longer saw her own children as human beings.
It's a chilling thought and leads us to the testimony of David Warwick, who was Melanie Gibbs' husband.
Oh, right.
Remember how Melanie's memory was a bit fuzzy about the weekend? Investigators believe JJ was killed?
Yeah, very convenient.
Right. Well, David shed some light on some of the things that happened in Lori's townhome that weekend.
Okay, so what did he say?
So he recalls seeing JJ alive on Saturday, but then the next day he was gone.
Oh, wow. And what did Lori say?
She claimed JJ was with his grandparents, which we know is not true.
Right. And then on Monday, she calls David and tells him she had a vision that JJ was in danger.
And that he needed to be taken away.
Wow. So it seems like she was actively involved in JJ's disappearance.
It does, and it's heartbreaking knowing what we know now.
It really is, and it's not over yet. Because week 4 also brings us closer to understanding what happened to Ty Lee.
Right through the testimony of Summer Shiflett.
Okay. And who is she?
She was Tylee's best friend.
Wow, so she must have been devastated.
She was, and, her testimony painted this really beautiful picture of Tylee as this bright, loving teenager who was close to both JJ and her mother.
Oh, it's just so sad.
It really humanizes the victims in this case.
Right, because we have to remember, these were real children with real lives.
And dreams and potential that were taken away from them.
Exactly. And on top of all of the emotional testimonies, we also had this big legal development.
Oh, right, the hearing about the alleged prosecutorial misconduct.
Right, so what happened?
Well, the judge ruled that while the prosecution had made some errors, they didn't rise to the level of misconduct that would dismiss the case.
Okay.
But he did give them a really stern warning.
So he's keeping an eye on them.
He emphasized how important transparency and fairness is in these trials.
Right, because everyone deserves a fair trial.
Exactly. And as we wrap up our deep dive into week 4 of the Chad Daybell trial, I think we're all left with this feeling of unease, like we've only just scratched the surface.
It's true, and it makes you think about, the power of belief and manipulation and the depths of human cruelty.
And at the end of the day, it's a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of seeking justice for those who can no longer speak for themselves.